Okay, guys, I am trying out a new system, so I apologize in advance for any glitches. Uh, by the way, if you're looking at the stuff up a little bit over and behind my head, that's nothing kinky. It's some of my workout stuff, which I haven't tried out for a while. That's just the way it goes. Okay, so. Uh, last time, I think I mentioned that I wanted to talk a little bit about textual criticism and the Greek manuscripts that we use for the New American Standard Bible. Uh, and you could say that all translators use for uh, translating their Bibles. We'll talk about the Hebrew manuscripts in the next session. So, one of the reasons I needed to use a different system is because the system I was using didn't have an easy way to do that, and this one should be much easier. A little background on manuscripts. And again, we're just going to talk about the Greek manuscripts this time. Um, uh, Back in the old days, even before I was born, the only real Bible around was the King James Version. And there were English translations before that, but the one that I grew up with was the King James, and many people still use it. And the debate that I was in way back in 95, not 2095, but 1995. Uh, well, some people even argued, who were in that debate, argued that the King James was more reliable than the manuscripts from which it was translated. And if that sounds crazy, well, I thought it was pretty crazy too. Uh, It was translated from, I think, about a dozen late manuscripts, and uh, it was the only Bible around, and I didn't necessarily like it. There was it was in King James English, which was the English that people actually spoke at the time, and uh, it was pretty hard to understand in places. And nowadays, there's one of the versions that is out is called the New King James Version, which is in a slightly updated style, probably easier to understand than the old King James Version. But it was still based on the same manuscripts that were available back then, and they were late manuscripts. Late meaning that they were all copies of manuscripts that were available. Um, well, let's just say they were available in around uh, 10,000, 1100 AD, in that range, and later. So we consider that late for New Testament manuscripts. Okay? So, what happened, and you can only consider it, I guess, an act of God, I don't know how else to put it, is in the late 19th centuries, in the late 1800s and beyond that, all of a sudden, what we now call early manuscripts started to be discovered. Some of these were on parchment, fairly complete manuscripts. Others were scraps of manuscripts, and they were written mainly on papyrus. The made of papyrus reeds that you find mostly in the swamps of in Egypt, and when we talk about early manuscripts, we're talking manuscripts of the New Testament from the 4th century, basically. So that's much, much earlier than the manuscripts that were used for the King James and some of the Bibles that came before the King James. So those are what we like to call early manuscripts. And there were 2 leading manuscripts, 2 main manuscripts. One of them is called Vaticanus because it's housed at the Vatican. Another one was called Alexandrinus because it was discovered at a monastery in, I should say Sinaiticus, not Alexandrinus. Sinaiticus because it was discovered at a monastery, I think near Mount Sinai. So these were both manuscripts that were copied in the 4th century, and we have some papyrus scraps that go back even earlier than that, to the 3rd century and possibly to the 2nd century AD. All right. So these early manuscripts were discovered, and they became the basis for newer translations. We use them primarily for the New American Standard Bible, and most of the modern translations, the English Standard Version, the Christian Standard Version, some of the others. That's my wife. You can say hi to her if you want, but she probably won't hear you. These manuscripts are the basis for the more modern translations, and they are represented in some of the Greek texts that we use today. The main text that we use, and most of the modern translations use, is called the Nestle-Aland text, or the NA text for short. In fact, let me, hey hon, could you do me a favor? I forgot to pick it up. Come over here. She'll just take a second. You see that blue book there, little blue book on the... No, yeah, that one. Could you hand that to me? Okay, thank you. This is the Nestle-Aland text. You see Novum Testamentum Graeca. That's just Latin for Greek New Testament, and then you see Nestle-Aland at the top. That is has been the current Greek New Testament in the Nestle-Aland version for quite some time. It's the 28th text edition that they've published, and they are on the verge of publishing, the outfit that publishes these is on the verge of publishing the 29th text, okay, the 29th edition. They have already published what's called the 6th edition of the GNT, the Greek New Testament, creative name, and that probably has the same text as what the 29th edition of the Nestle-Aland text will have, okay? It's a somewhat simplified version in terms of the apparatus that shows you various, I'll show you here what this one looks like. If you see the top part, is the text, and then down at the bottom you see a bunch of squiggly stuff and fine parts. Those are apparatus. That's what we call the apparatus. And that shows you variant readings, some readings that were options that were rejected and other readings that were accepted for the text of this Greek New Testament, the Nestle Aland version. Okay, and some people call this the critical text. That's a terrible name for it. It sounds like it's criticizing something, but that's because it's based on a detailed analysis of the manuscripts that are available, and the apparatus shows you the choices that were made by the editors. Okay, now as I say, those are choices made by the editors, both accepting and rejecting what they find in these original manuscripts. Okay, and that's an important concept. Now, why is that so important, you might ask? Well, because translators like myself, we are experts too about this. We have to be, because that's part of the job. Okay? A lot of people think that translators simply follow what they find in the text of one of these published Greek texts. And again, let me show you. You may not read Greek. I expect you can't yet. Maybe you haven't studied it. But that's the text. You see the numbers there. Those are the verse numbers, and everything else is in Greek. Okay? Some people think that we just follow what's in the text there. We could, you know, and maybe some translators do. If they do, I would fire them if it were my job to publish the text, because they're not doing their job. They need to know enough about analyzing these various manuscripts in order to make decisions on their own about what the best reading is, or what. Well, let me leave it at that for the moment. What the best reading is, because what does that mean? What would be the best reading? Well, I thought of how do I explain this? Let me give you an analogy. All right. You know, everybody knows what the Declaration of Independence is, at least in the United States. And if you go to Washington, D.C., you can go to, I think it's the National Archives. We were in Washington once, and we saw unless they're hiding it from us somewhere and just showing us a facsimile, we saw the original Declaration of Independence. Okay? Yeah, it's pretty cool. You see the signatures of everybody who signed it and all of that, and you see the original words written there. Okay, I mean, you see how it was written, all in ink and preserved very carefully and all of that. Well, let's say that you want a copy of that. All right. There's all sorts of ways you can get copies of the Declaration of Independence. One is you can just go online somewhere or look it up in an encyclopedia and see what it says. That's the text, okay? That's the text in, black and white, typewritten, whatever you want. On the other hand, you could probably go online and purchase a what amounts to a photocopy of it, right? A facsimile copy that looks like it's a photographic copy of the Declaration of Independence. All right? So, those are two different options you could have. Well, as we all know, when the original writers of the New Testament wrote their documents out, the first thing they did is they wanted to preserve them, right? So what they did is they went to Office Depot and they made hundreds of copies of their exact handwritten copy so that it would be preserved forever, right? And then down through the ages, everybody else did the same thing. They went to Office Depot or anybody who had a photocopy machine, and they rigged up their generators and ran the photocopiers and made all those copies, and that's what we got now, and we can rely on all those copies, right? Not quite. Yeah, it didn't work that way. So I wish it had. I wish it was all as simple as that. But that's not how it was. We know that what really happened was when Paul and Matthew and Mark and Luke and John and all the writers wrote the New Testament, or wrote their books of the New Testament and their letters and so forth, other people made copies, scribes, secretaries, etc. They made copies of those documents, all right? And we know that those copies don't all agree with each other. It'd be nice if they did, but they don't, all right? And you buy a Bible, or you read the Bible online now, or whatever. Maybe you have a Bible program that comes with various copies of the Bible, and now it's your choice and or privilege, or your job, maybe if you're a pastor or a Bible teacher, to use the Bible, in your study. If you're a parent, you have a Bible that you have to train your kids by, so you have a job too, You have to make a choice. Some people have several Bibles, and they think that if they have several Bibles, they can pick and choose between the Bibles and make a good choice from what they like, I've got I've got some artwork and photographic artwork on my wall hanging up. I don't know a lot about art, but I know what I like, kind of like that. So anyway, so that's kind of what happened in copying these original writings of the New Testament writers, the apostles, and the other people who wrote letters and books of the New Testament. They were copying these by hand because, unfortunately, of course, they didn't have photocopy machines like we do now. And we know that, the copies don't all agree, all right? That's the problem. And it's the job of experts to try to figure out, when they don't agree, what is the original reading. Not what the reading is that makes the most sense to us, but what the original reading is. Why? Well, we don't want a reading that somebody else, that somebody may have changed from the original and made it, made something up that made sense to them. We don't want that, because that's not the Word of God. That's not the inspired text that the original author wrote. We want the original text, right? Yeah, that's what we want. And how do we find that? How do we get that? Well, that's the challenge. And that's where the original documents come in, or the older documents come in. The old thinking, and here I'm going to get into something a little bit more complicated. The old thinking and the traditional thinking has been that the earliest manuscripts are more likely to have the original readings, the original choices, or the original writing than late manuscripts are. Okay? That makes sense? Well, it turns out that these older documents have readings in them that seem a little bit more difficult in many places. All right, and by difficult I mean readings that are more challenging to understand, sometimes, or to make sense of. So what we're looking for is texts that were more likely to be changed to something else, you know. So when we have a choice between when readings don't agree, that is, when we have a choice between a reading that is easier to read or makes sense and one that is harder to read but still makes sense, then the one that is harder to read is more likely to be the original, because it follows that any reasonable person would not change an easier to understand reading to something that is harder to understand, right? Yeah. We give scribes and secretaries credit for that. We don't think they're nutty, you know, where they would change easier readings into harder readings. We suspect the reverse. Okay? I hope that makes sense. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for when there are differences in readings, and overall that doesn't happen a lot. There's mostly agreement between manuscripts, which just shows that all of the writers, all of the scribes, all the copyists, the ones who were copying manuscripts, that they respected what they were working with, and they were very careful to do it right. That when they did make changes, they were probably changing what they thought was a hard reading or something that didn't quite make sense to them. They were changing it to something that was easier. So we respect their intentions. We understand they had good intentions, but we don't want their changes. We want the original text, you know. Now, and this is part of what we call the science of textual criticism, you know. Again, using criticism in this way. Now, there's a caveat to that. Caveat is Latin for be careful, look out. And the caveat is a harder reading, you know, one that's harder to understand, is preferable to the easier one unless it's too hard, unless it makes no sense, you know. And then maybe the easier reading is better because maybe the harder reading was due to a mistake of some kind. All right. Now, I don't like that caveat, but I have to admit that, yeah, sometimes that can happen. So my approach to that is that, okay, I'll buy into that if I can find some reason for the harder reading being a mistake, okay? Some scholars like to just go with it no matter what, you know. I don't, again, I'm very uncomfortable going with it no matter what. And in future videos, maybe I'll talk about some of those exceptions. Anyway, so one more thing, and then I'll shut up, and we'll look into the video, the next video, that'll focus on the Old Testament. This is still talking about the New Testament in Greek here. Something that has come up more recently is what is called the coherence-based genealogical method, CBGM for short. I mentioned that the Nestle Allen 29th edition has not been published yet. Well, the organization that publishes both texts has done something different now, has gone into something called the CBGM, as I just said, this new approach, and it's based on something like looking at the manuscripts as a family tree, all right? And remember I talked about what if you had photocopy machines, you know, in history, and you could just photocopy the text, things like that. You'd be focusing on the text, not the materials that it was produced on. It wouldn't matter what the materials were. So they take something of the same approach, and they say it's not the material the text is written on that matters, it's the text that matters. All right? The text itself, what is written, not so much the material, because every scribe, every secretary, every person who has copied the text is working with the text that has been handed down through the ages. And so, in theory at least, the text could be much older than the material that it was copied on. And that will be somewhat relevant when I talk about the Old Testament. It'll be more relevant then. But that's what this new system, the CBGM, coherence-based genealogical method, is based on. And you can look this up for yourself online. I'm going to switch over to that in a second here and show you how to do that and how it works. In this system, the date of a manuscript is ignored as far as the computer programming itself is concerned. The date isn't part of the system. It isn't weighted. And I'm talking about weight in terms of if you get on a bathroom scale. It isn't weighted into the system, okay? Because, again, theoretically, it's the text that matters, not the material it's printed on. Now, even though that's true, it turns out that the oldest manuscripts still count heavily in the system. And that's pretty much what you'd expect, because they tend to have readings that prove to be the harder readings, the ones most likely to have been changed and therefore are earlier readings. Now I'm going to switch over to show you what this looks like. I think I can do that in this new system here. Here we go. If you look at, this is at the University of Munster, and if you want to look at it online, you can see the address there up the top. And this is looking at Acts Phase 5 here. So you can see various, let's see. All right, I thought I could do this and simply move things around. Okay, apparently I can't. All right, well, that's right. These are all pictures that are these are just photos. I thought I could move this around and it won't let me. All right, so I apologize for that. I'm going to go back to my online camera here. Okay. Well, if you go online, you will find that at this source, you will be able to look up you'll be able to look up relatives. All right. You'll find that it has relatives for all of these manuscripts. And yeah, I'm still trying to learn the best way to do these things. So let me see if I can get you back to where I am. Okay. All right, that's not working. Well, to be continued, I guess. All right. I will apologize for that. I am still learning, and I will see you next time.